Well, good morning, everybody. This is a great group, jeepers. Almost makes me nervous. But I tend to be more of a ham when I have a bigger audience, and I admit it. And it's probably just from my childhood insufficiencies or something. But we're going to have a good time today. We're going to try to have a good time. There's a lot of stuff to talk about. My name is Dorf. I was with NCARB just volunteered to do work with NCARB for about 15 years, grading exams, writing exams, designing this crazy computer stuff. So if you really don't like it, you can partially blame me. Just don't throw anything today. So it's partially my fault, but it was a committee. And we had an assignment, we had to do it, and that's what we got. It's not great, and it's evolving. I mean, a lot of my lecture is guessing, but it's intellectual guess based on what I know about NCARB and what they'd like to test on, what's important, how they weight things, what's not important, so forth. It's kind of guesswork. I mean, they don't tell me, and I get a lot of feedback from people. So they say I didn't do this, and I'm sure I'll fail. They get back to me. They didn't fail, so I know that's not fatal error. But it's hard to second guess NCARB sometimes. It really is. So this is the way I'm going to organize today. All right. I'm going to talk about some general issues on taking the exam, which will affect you. I mean, I don't spend a lot of time on it because you're here to learn about the vignettes and how to approach them and so forth. But these are important in terms of taking the exam. Just be prepared. We'll go into detail after that on each vignette, what to look for, fatal errors or things that are potentially fatal, where you can get some feedback on who's good, who's not good, what books are good to read, what's a waste of time, is to go to the ARE forum. Does everybody know about the ARE forum? If you haven't gone there yet, you've missed a lot. areforum.org. I mean, you've got 5,000, 6,000 candidates. Maybe not that many now because many people have passed, and they're talking back and forth about what's good to study, how to study, what mistakes they made taking the exam. And one of the most common one is that people, like on the interiors, it's a hard problem to do in 60 minutes, but they manipulate, they get good at doing this stuff. They manipulate, and they got 10 minutes left. Wow, I can, let's massage this a little bit, like a little bit more room between the desk and the wall, and they start massaging, and by the end of 8 minutes, they've screwed the whole plan up. And it's not funny. It's what happens. You move a piece of furniture and you grab the room instead, and you move the room. Now you move the room, windows and doors and everything else disappear. So you got to replant your doors. I mean, it's their stupid software. You got to work with it. So chances are, if you have 10 minutes left and you see, unless there's a major error that you recognize, some code issue that you think is very important, even if it's, you made a code error, if it's not, a major thing, don't worry about it. Well, I'm going to tell you how to cheat a little bit, how to, make an error to save yourself in the last, 5 minutes. So don't do that last-minute massaging you think is going to be a little bit better. It'll end up being worse. In the graphics, when we used to grade, the pass rate was in, around 30%, 33% for the graphics. And it wasn't that we tried to make it 30%. We graded these things by hand, passed it on and so forth, didn't count, didn't keep track. And at the end of the session, they told us how many people passed and how many people failed. It was usually around 30, 33, 35% pass. That's pretty low, and they got criticized for it. Okay? So, here's other professions saying you passed 30% of your candidates taking the exam. This is a pretty hard exam. How many people go to the testing center 9 days? I'm sure the lawyers go 1 day and they take their exam and whatever. So it's a tough exam, but it's better than it was. Now it's 68%. It's 100% easier. Okay, preparation. Let's talk about that. Obviously, the biggest thing is to work with NCARB's tools, which you download. Has everybody downloaded their software and so forth? Practice this stuff. This is your time management. You've got to get used to their software. It's crude, it's slow, it's frustrating, it's inaccurate. You'll learn that pretty fast. It's not CAD. You'll learn that pretty fast. You've got to learn it. This is your method of taking a test. Once you've taken a test, forget about it and never look at it again, which would be fine. Take mock exams. I've offered some today to people, and I urge you to do it. What you're going to do, my computer mock exam takes NCARB's base drawings. I use those base drawings. So you're going to open up NCARB's software, pin my problem on the wall so you don't underline things and highlight things because you can't do that. You're going to practice taking notes and having your keyboard over here. You're going to take notes and you're going to have a stopwatch. Okay? Hoping you can find one that ticks backwards. That would be nice. There is a program that allows you to put it on. I don't know what it is. You're going to solve my problem. You're not going to toggle back to NCARB's problem. You're going to solve my problem using the NCARB tools and the NCARB base drawings. They're very different problems. It's not something you practice with. It's something you do to see how your timing was. And if it took you, an hour to do a half-hour problem, you're in trouble. You're going to have to practice it. Okay? Then what you can do is once you have your solution on the screen, this is the way you copy it. There's an upper right-hand corner of your keyboard. There's a key that says Print Screen. Pretty handy. Push it. Nothing will happen. You'll say, it said push Print Screen. Push Print Screen. Nothing will happen. Exit NCARB's program. All the way. Then go into a Word document. That's what I do. Word document. Go up to Edit and Paste. Just click Paste. It will paste your screen onto the Word document, and you can stretch it and make it pretty big and so forth. So get a guidebook. Follow along. Find out. I can't do everything today. Guidebook gets into more detail. Renew some acquaintances. Get a little study group together. 4 or 5 people, 2 or 3 people. Meet every week. Some regular schedule, like a poker game. Instead of doing that, you're studying for the exam. Discuss vignettes. Go back and do a couple of problems to discuss them when you get together. You'll learn a lot. You'll learn a lot about the code or the program you missed or didn't read. You see, I can't do that. So get a little study group. That really helps. Seminars, you're doing that. Where to start? Someone asked, where to start on this thing. Start with something you're comfortable with. Get it out, get it behind you. And then go to the next one, or something. You may feel very confident after today that you can start with graphics. Graphics and multiple choice are, totally different animals, so it really doesn't matter. And graphics is an animal. It's just totally different. You don't have to study for it. You just have to know what they're testing and know the software. So you could do that anytime. But get it going. Just get it going. This sounds like a cliche, relax, but you really have to learn how to relax. It's not the end of the world if you fail this exam or a vignette or a division. It's not like you're a bad architect. Very often, certainly when I graded by hand, I could tell the good architects from the bad architects, sometimes just the way they drew or how they organized things and so forth. And a lot of times they failed. It's the good architects often that fail. And what causes them to fail is they overthink the problem. They try to be too architectural, too all-knowing, they just think about too much. Well, these problems are pretty basic. They're just test problems. They don't want you to submit to a client and get feedback and be a great designer. They're just, did you follow the program and did you meet the code? Nothing fancy. overdo it, overthink it, second-guess NCARB, as a lot of people will do, especially good architects. You could easily fail or run out of time. Okay, you may not be happy with your final solution, but if it's passing, who cares? So try to relax. You can always come back, take it again in 6 months. Just don't tell anybody you failed. All right, but come back. I think they told me the other day that the average from start to finish is 2.5 years for candidates to pass this test. 2.5 years. And that's kind of what they based their start of 4.0. So they announced it. You got 2.5 years to finish up, so forth. Set up. I mean, you're going to be practicing at home. You're going to be playing with their software. I would set up your desk at home or at the office, wherever you do your study, the way you would in the testing center. Don't put your keyboard right in front of you, as you normally would, because you're not going to use your keyboard. The only thing you use is the space bar. So put it over on your left and get used to doing this with your left hand. Space bar, space bar, space bar. You can't type anything. You can't put any numbers in, whatever. In front of you, you should put your note paper. And I'm going to urge you today, probably too often, too many times, to take notes. Read the program carefully. Take notes. Don't rewrite the program. Take key things. Ceiling heights, whatever. Population, occupancy, whatever. Key things. And you'll learn what those key things are. All these problems are written the same. Okay, and on your right would be your mouse. I'm assuming you're right-handed. Okay. If you have a problem, one problem I discovered down in Florida. On the first problem we do, they give you a background of floor plans, and you have to draw a section. Well, you're going to draw the section right on top of the plans, which is kind of crazy, but that's where you have to do it. Right on top of the crazy stuff already. It's going to be confusing. But it's all done in color. Everything you draw is in color, so you can kind of see it. You get used to that. It's something you have to practice. Some guy in Florida raised his hand and said, "Well, I'm colorblind." Yeah, I mean, a poor guy. It'd be a tough problem to do if you're colorblind. Now, that's the kind of thing where you can get, some kind of written thing from a doctor, and NCARB has to give you extra time because you'd probably have to put this thing below the plan in some free area so you could see what you were doing. They'll probably give you another 15 minutes to do this problem. Take advantage of it. Go to your state board and say, "I have this problem. I can't do it." If you're pregnant, you have to get up and walk around a little bit. I'm talking to the girls now. Okay. And you have to walk around a little bit and stretch or whatever, and you need extra time because of your physical condition, which may be mental. Okay? Attention deficit or something. If you have you get a doctor's excuse, get extra time. So, state boards, they allow you to do that. If you're handicapped in any way, you have the possibility of extending time or taking it in pieces or whatever. Snacks, don't bring anything heavy to your exam. They do give you a break, 15 minutes, all these divisions. Don't bring something heavy. The most common thing I hear on the internet on my forum is, bring a banana or a fruit, some fruit juice, or a health bar, but nothing heavy that you spend all your energy digesting. Note paper. They give you like 6 sheets of paper when you walk in. I think it's in a little, I don't know what they do with that. Count your paper. Now, I don't know if I'm just being a worrywart or exaggerating something, but someone called me and said he took his break and he passed in his paper. You can't leave something in there and you can't take it with you. Passed in his paper to the front desk, and they counted 5 pieces, and they said, "No, you sneaky guy, you owe us 6. He said, "You only gave me 5. How can I give you 6 back?" "No, we gave you 6. Back and forth. Poor guy had to wait 2.5 hours in the waiting room while they looked at the videotape of his first session to see if he pocketed a piece of paper. He didn't, they let him back in again. But, look how this disturbs your momentum and so forth. So it may be worth counting your paper to see if they're giving them the right number. I don't know how serious it is. Maybe they've beat that problem. I haven't heard about it since. Your calculator, you're not going to be able to bring one in. Get comfortable, and this sounds stupid, but bring some Excedrin or Tylenol or aspirin. Who wants to take 6 hours of exam with a headache or a stomach ache? Bring something that maybe it's emergency, but try to get comfortable. Air conditioning may be very cold in there wherever you're testing, or it may be not working at all that day in the middle of summer. You're going to want to peel some stuff off and work in a t-shirt, which is okay. Bring layered clothing so you can go either way. Don't be fancy and bring electronics into the test. I hear stories about people bringing cameras in their glasses to take pictures of the screen. I don't know what they do with these pictures. Maybe they sell them on eBay. Maybe you can find something, which isn't going to help anybody, because you're getting a piece of one problem. It's not going to show anything. And they have, sophisticated equipment now that picks up whether you have cameras with you, electronics, everything, or even a cell phone. Now, I got a call from Florida probably about 3 years ago now. And, I offer, if you got a question, give me a call or something. And this guy called and had a problem with the stair code. Can we discuss that? I said, yeah, sure. What's up? 5-minute discussion about stair code, so forth. And I said, okay now? He says, yeah, I understand it now. I said, when do you take the exam? He says, I'm taking it now. Wham! I hung up that phone so fast, but he apparently got his cell phone in and panicked and gave me a call. If I was going to break this problem down into its basic components, not the problem, this test, I would say it's 40% time management and 60% did you follow the program, did you follow the code? It's not design issues. I use that term very loosely. It's really program plus code. And it means reading carefully and not missing something. It means understanding the code before you go into the test. Know it well enough that you memorized it, you know what to expect. I don't think they change the codes between problems. Maybe a paragraph or so, and we'll talk about that. But I don't think they change it. But time management, is very, very important. Now, this is the way we used to grade. We'd get 50 people, one from each state or board, and we'd meet twice a year, and we'd grade 6,000, 7,000 exams in 3.5 days. And we'd sit down, grade these things. We wouldn't see how our compatriots were grading. We'd grade one, it was passed around to somebody else. They had to be graded twice, at least. Sometimes 3 times to break a tie. If someone failed it, someone passed it, graded a third time. To do 6,000 to 7,000 exams twice in 3.5 days with 50 people, attached to that we had a lot of high school kids passing exams around, and NCARB was there, and ETS was there in those days, helping out, passing things around, and checking our grades, see how we were grading, too high, too soft, too easy, too hard. You would spend 12 hours doing an exam. I'd spend 2 minutes grading it. I mean, it's crazy. 1.5 minutes, 2 minutes. Site design, you'd spend 3 hours doing the problem. I grade it in 10 seconds. Had to. We had so many. But it wasn't like you were giving you short shift, but because it was very easy. Some of the mistakes were very basic. I could pick up a mistake as a grader very fast. Could see things very, very fast. But I didn't have time to measure things. I didn't have time to count your cars. I had to assume if it looked like 40, it probably was 40. You probably knew the rumor and you didn't have 40. But, if it looked okay, you didn't solve a different problem, make it easier or, whatever. Harder is probably okay, but easier, no. I could pass you. That's called holistic scoring. If it looked okay, I didn't measure things. I didn't measure if you had 9 by 18 parking stalls. If they looked like the right size, that's fine. So what? They're a foot off. You didn't make the problem that much easier. Now I think they're taking this into the computer. They're trying to make the computer be as human as possible, that it grades holistically. It knows exactly how many cars you've placed on that site. It knows exactly how big you made those stalls. But it's saying, okay, we'll give you some leeway. And they program that into the scoring. We'll give them 2 cars one way or the other. I mean, I don't know, but that kind of thing. Maybe even 3 cars. They could be off by 10%, maybe 12%. I don't know how they're doing it. But you don't have to be exact. And that's kind of your computer scoring holistically. It'll allow that you missed a door. Big deal. If you had 5 more minutes, you would have found the missing door. Why fail you for one stupid error? And we would give you, 1 of 4 scores, but, basically, failing solutions 1 or 2, 3 or 4 for pass. And then we would add all these things up at the end of the day and multiply it by a magic figure and figure out whether you passed or failed. Those are humans giving scores, okay? Now today, group of architects, 4, 5, 6 architects, would sit down in a room for a weekend and discuss a particular division or a particular problem in that division. And they would break that problem down. Maybe it's stair, maybe it's roof, whatever. They'd break it down into its main features. What kind of things do you want the computer to look at? What kind of things do we think are important as architects that we want to test these guys on? Main features. Maybe code, maybe program, maybe proper drainage, maybe whatever. Stair is usually just code and program. And then they'd spend another day just breaking these features down into sub-features. Well, what's important about the code? The railings, width of stair, et cetera, et cetera. There may be some design logic here. How many turns and twists did you make? Is it difficult? Did you overbuild this thing unnecessarily? You'll find that I think 100% of NCARB's problems, they're looking for efficient solutions. Not just a solution, but efficiency. Don't overbuild landings and so forth. What do you really need? Not that it has to be the most efficient. You don't have time to look at 5 different schemes and figure out which is the most efficient. But think efficiency on all these problems. And they'd talk these out. And then they discuss these, break them down into sub-features, and even more. I mean, you could take a problem and just dissect it into multiple things that the computer could be programmed to look at. Boring, but that's what they do. And they can assign a weight to each one. As I would think as you get down here or even lower, that these things are looked at, but they're less and less important. So you can make several mistakes down here, or several mistakes at this level, and it wouldn't add up to be fatal. Get up here now, if you made some major error here, it's getting pretty serious. And at the end, the computer's going to look at what mistakes you made here and what mistakes you made here and down here and maybe even up here and add them all up and say, hey, this is too much. Come back on that problem. In my capacity as a lecturer and the fact that I've already passed the exam and so forth, I can keep a sense of humor. And I hope you guys can. I mean, it's not the end of the world if you fail. So try to be loose about this. This is a test and whatever, and you'll get through it eventually. So I tend to think I'm David Letterman now, and a lot of these things I've just gotten off the internet. These are all true, and they bring up problems I'm sure a lot of you guys have had. How many people have taken the exam? any part of it. So you know about the testing centers. I mean, there's some horror stories that I hear at the testing centers. I mean, some of them are hilarious. You want to keep a sense of humor. People say that, one person said that, and excuse my language on this, but someone said they were taking a test, and all during the day when they're taking their schematics or something, there was somebody behind them taking a test, facing the other way or whatever. But every 5 minutes, you'd hear this, oh, damn, oh, shit. Someone was disturbed by what they were doing didn't know it was a nurse or an architect, but got that kind of feedback from somebody else, being disgruntled and having a hard time. Someone said that they called me up and said that they got a testing booth with a circular fan in the ceiling, which was great. I said, it's terrific, got a little circulation, kept you awake and so forth. He said it was fine until I realized a shadow went across my screen every half a second. He said, after a while, I could not concentrate. I was waiting for the shadow. I couldn't concentrate, and I literally had to get up and leave and take the exam again and ask for a booth that didn't have a fan over it. And that's one thing I would urge you to do. Go down to their testing center if you're going to be there 9 days in your life to take the stupid test. Okay? I don't mean to say stupid. Sorry, NCARB. It's not a stupid test. It's a difficult test. 9 days. Go down there. Meet the proctors. Schmooze them a little bit. Try to get a good testing booth that's away from the front door. I mean, nurses, high school kids are all going in, the door's banging, whatever. It's disturbing. There's lots of noise. They give you earphones, but that's disturbing, So try to find an isolated desk if you can and get the number of it. And when you sign up for a test, you say, can I request this test? Who knows? Maybe they liked you and they'll give you that testing booth or reserve it for you. Sometimes the handicap booth is isolated. If it's not being used, can I use it? Yes, whatever. Someone told me that they were sitting at a testing booth and there was someone across the way from them on the opposite side of a little wall. And the whole day, that person was nervous and was hitting the desk with his knee, which shook her computer, shook her keyboard and everything else all day long. Boom, boom, boom. I mean, it's crazy. So I love this one. Someone told me that they were, working away on their site plan and gotten about an hour and 15 minutes into it, and the proctor came over, snuck over, looked over his shoulder and said, oh, what a beautiful drawing. I mean, wouldn't you like to go boom? I mean, you're really trying to concentrate and they love your drawing. What are you going to do, stop and talk about it? But you hear horror stories like that, so, be prepared. So you got to keep a sense of humor about this. But you drive to work and you find yourself in the testing parking lot instead. I mean, you're going to go there 9 times. You know which computer station has the squeaky chair, right? They're all true. You begin to think that the NCARB software is actually more efficient than AutoCAD. Won't happen. Exam and study costs exceed the hospital bill for your firstborn. Sorry about that, guys. Kids at the testing center call you uncle or aunt. They'll probably even give you slippers. They'll know your face so well. You and the testing proctor become drinking buddies. The sight of the mailman sends you into a cold sweat. All true, right? They're all kind of true. So, you laugh at it now, but, these are kind of come into your life. Don't do it. A lot of people do. I called up Houston a couple of years ago. I called up everybody there. There must have been 70 people. Called up everybody that attended a 3-day workshop. It was a long workshop, a lot of effort. Called up everybody and said, okay, it's been a year. How'd you do? I was very surprised to learn 40% of the people hadn't taken any exams at all. They went through all this rigmarole and the cost and got it all fresh and they're all hyped up and they just procrastinated. This is easy to procrastinate. I could be the worst. I guarantee I'd be the worst procrastinator. So they didn't take anything. Of the 60% that did take something, actually 100% of them passed. Now that I love to use those averages. But I think it's usually in the neighborhood of 96 to 97%. I really increase your likelihood of passing when it's the 68 national average. If you're in the 94 average, that's great. You know, I can't hold your hand for you. I wish I could. But you'll do well if you don't procrastinate too much. I mean, it's fresh in your mind. Don't be afraid of it. Now, the computer interface, you know, your screen, going to be identical to what they give you to practice on at home. They don't give you a clock. There is a clock up here on the right-hand corner which ticks backwards. You know, they give you 2 hours, 120 minutes or something, or 2.5 hours, 150 minutes. You've got to keep track of where you should be at the end of a problem, suggested time. They suggested 1 hour time to finish a problem. Now, keep track. Maybe you finish early, but you know where you are. You don't want to get behind. So that's your clock. And it blinks as it gets close to the end. That would drive me nuts. You know, you get 5 minutes left, the clock starts to blink on you. That's terrible. These are your drawing tools. That's pretty much similar on all problems. They may add a task here. Maybe you can rotate something, or a check button, see if you've killed trees or whatever. They'll add and subtract from this group. These are your drawing tools. Obviously, they're very important. Draw will list the things you have to draw for that particular problem. It's a good checklist. I mean, it lists all the spaces that have to be drawn for schematics, for instance. As you use it, it disappears from the list. So it's a good check. Did I put everything in? If you missed a space, I mean, you've solved something else. That could easily be fatal. Move and adjust tool. I mean, get used to that. You're going to use that 15 or 20 times each problem. And you have to get used to what you have to, you know, put your mouse on, how to move it, how to change its shape, what kind of information is given at the bottom of the screen when you do move something or do change its shape. Some objects you can't change it by grabbing the side and moving it. It won't happen. If it's a polygon, for instance. If it's a rectangle, you can change the shape using that. Find out which shapes are changed and how to do them. I mean, just second nature. Move group, I use occasionally, not very often. So I wouldn't get too serious about that. Layers. A lot of problems you actually are going to do on layers. The roof, there's a high roof, there's a low roof. Stair, there's an upper level, there's a lower level. Then on layers. Structural, upper roof, lower roof. Whereas other problems, like the first one we talk about today, section, information is given on layers. First floor, second floor. You have to look at both floors. You're going to go to finish for the first. You're going to go to the second, etc. Informational stuff is provided. So get used to that. And there's a check button and there's a rotate button and so forth. Design tools. Crude as they may be, they can be very helpful. Don't make the mistake of designing a building or a ramp or a stair on your note paper, unless it's just to organize your mind or organize the problem in a very thumbnail type of thing. Look at options. I do that a lot. But don't design it and hope to transfer it onto your screen when you think you're satisfied. They don't give you a scale. So you're drawing at a scale, unless you're really, really very good. And you're going to transfer it onto your screen or something. It's going to be at a scale. Something's not going to work. I mean, these things, they don't give you a lot of extra room. So you need some pretty exact dimensions. So don't make that mistake. Use these design tools. Design on the screen. And the way you do that is, one is use ortho. Click ortho on. Ortho is when you're going to draw everything orthogonally. Okay? vertical, horizontal. There's no reason to draw. I mean, I'd say 98% of stuff you draw for your solutions can be done orthogonally. It's a lot faster. You can line things up better. You can get walls to line up with other walls much easier, obviously, if everything's parallel. If you get into angles and they can't prevent you from using angles or trying to be a Frank Lloyd Wright, they can't prevent you. That's not, they give you as much freedom. You can do that, but it's just harder to do, takes longer, and it's going to be less accurate. So there are times when you have to go off ortho and draw a diagonal sun exposure plane or a grade that goes up or a hill or something. You have to take it off, but generally keep it on. Get used to that. There may be occasions when the problem just kind of forces you into a diagonal scheme, but I sort of doubt that they force you into something like that. It just takes that much longer to solve. Sketch means this is your sketch paper. This is your yellow paper. Okay, if you click sketch, you're going to get a submenu like this with bunch of things you can use to kind of set up things. Everything you draw using in the sketch mode, they're putrid pea green lines you'll be drawing, and they'll show up as green. They're not graded. Those are yours. You're going to use them to set up, I want this size shape here, and where can I put a stair, where can I put the parking, well, this is the sizes where it could go. These are all your sketch lines, just to kind of size up a problem. In terms of scale. There's no scale in these drawings. You're going to have to draw something or measure something to find out distances between objects. And you can do that by clicking measure. You can measure from A to B. Or draw a line, see how long a line you've drawn. Draw a circle. I use circles a lot because they're repetitive. You can repeat that, whatever you... If you have a 3-foot diameter circle and you're using that for interiors problem, you can draw 15 of them really fast. It's the only object you can repeat without redrawing. If you want a couple of rectangles, you have to draw a couple of rectangles. You can't copy it. You can't repeat it. So that's time consuming. So try to find ways of using circles. That helps. Incidentally, you can leave your elements on there if you have rectangles and measured lines and so forth. You can leave them on your screen when you leave the problem, when you leave the test. They claim, they are not graded. If you like to see your solution without all the green lines that you've used, simplify the solution in drawing, hide them. You can always put them back on again if you want to, check something. So you can hide them. Now grids. Not all problems have grids, and you don't have to use the grid. For background grids, out of 11 problems, they give you 7 of them that have grids, different scales. I don't find them particularly useful, frankly. The ones I'm showing in green, I would say you better use them. It's going to allow you to solve the problem much faster, with much more accuracy. Use those grids. Site design has a 10-foot grid. All the parking, 9 feet wide. And it would be really nice if they just made them, NCARB, listen to me, make them 10 feet wide. We can use the grid much more effectively. But right now they're 9 feet. Maybe that's close enough. Maybe the grid would help you. I'm not saying don't use the grid. Try it at home. See if it's comforting. See if it helps you get some scale or line things up or whatever if you want to. Things don't have to line up. But definitely get used to these. Schematic, 5-foot grid. Well, you really don't need to put things on modules. There's no structure involved. But it may give you a sense of scale. I just say practice at home. Now there are quirks. When I think of a quirk, people are having problems with the software crashing on them at the testing center and so forth, and that can happen. Incidentally, if it does happen, if something happens, it stops. You can't do something you should be able to do. get the proctor over, note the time, see how much time you're losing, because a minute could be extremely important, so note the time, and they can usually fix the problem by going through the internet to Princeton or wherever Chauncey or Prometric is, and they can get into your problem and fix the issue, usually. But don't bank on that. Get the proctor's name, what time it happened, what form she filled out. Get as much information you can about that issue, because it may affect you later. It doesn't take too much time to get somebody's name and the form number. And then send it to NCARB. I had this problem. I lost 5 minutes. Can I have some, compensation for that or whatever? Do I have to come back? Do I have to repay? Do I have to wait 6 months? I mean, you screwed up. Give me a break. But you have to have information. If they don't have that, I'm not going to help you. Well, good luck to everybody, and I hope you all will pass. And don't procrastinate, please.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.